Oops. Sorry, whoever's that is. It's the guy whose headset's coming off. There you go. Sorry. Man. That actually makes more sense. Okay, thanks. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming here today. Today, I'm joined by mayors from across South Central to talk about a critical issue, and that is the natural gas production shortage in Cook Inlet. As some may remember, just over a decade ago, we were talking about a potential natural gas shortage in Cook Inlet, going so far as to prepare for rolling blackouts. Fortunately, at that time, our state legislature acted quickly to ensure more drilling activity in the Cook Inlet, and it worked. New companies invested in Alaska, particularly Hilcorp. Oil and gas production surged, and we enjoyed energy security for years. But now, 10 plus years later, we're at it again. As the aging Cook Inlet Basin becomes even more challenging for oil and gas companies to operate in, we once again face a serious natural gas shortage in the coming years. If we don't take action soon, energy prices in South Central Alaska could double. This is an incredibly complex issue, but fortunately, we have several options, but it will take all decks on hand to narrow down the best solution for Alaskans. That is why I'm standing up a South Central Mayors Energy Coalition. The coalition is comprised of the mayors across South Central that are here today. Kenai Borough Peter Machicki, Palmer Mayor Steve Carrington, Wasilla Mayor Glenda Ledford, Matsu Borough Mayor Edna DeVries, Kenai Mayor Brian Gabriel, Houston Mayor Carter Cole. Also participating but not here today are Homer Mayor Ken Kastner, Soldotna Mayor Paul Whitney, Seward Mayor Sue McClure, and also invited were Whittier Mayor Dave Dickinson. Together, we represent the voices of the communities across the region that will be directly impacted by the looming natural gas shortage. We will be working closely with Governor Dunleavy, South Central Legislative Delegation, and local utilities to ensure our energy security, a mission that is paramount for our future prosperity. During the upcoming state's legislative session, the South Central Mayors Energy Coalition will be working closely with lawmakers to find the solution that is best for our communities. And most importantly, we will support policies that ensure our communities keep the lights on and the heat on without interruption. And with that, I'd like to pivot to Mayor Ledford. She will read our mission statement.
Thank you. South Central Mayors Energy Coalition mission statement. The goal of the South Central Mayors Energy Coalition is to consider the energy needs of South Central Alaska and to explore options to meet those needs, while assessing cost and the availability of natural resources and communicating the coalition's findings to our constituents. Factors include Alaska's current energy potential, future energy deficits, natural gas production in the Cook Inlet, renewable energy alternatives, and the viability of various financial incentives.
And with that, I'd like to pivot to Mayor Peter Machicki for some comments.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for bringing us together today. So I look at things a little differently. I'm not going to use words like looming. I'm going to let you know that these are issues that we've been dealing with for the last several years. We see the trend of production. We know that it's going to become an issue. Unfortunately, sometimes policymakers don't move until we see out into the future that there's going to be a problem if we don't act. That's what happened in 2009, and we acted. I was in the industry at the time, but working with policymakers, we were able to put the right pieces together to ensure that we had additional production. That's our goal today, is to evaluate how to incentivize the industry to meet the needs of the next several years, and then come together with other policymakers to make sure that we have a long-term plan so we don't find ourselves in the same situation down the road. The energy business is cyclical, and it is just because of the market forces that say policymakers don't normally react until they see prices increasing. Prices increase when there's a shortage. It's a simple supply and demand situation. Our job is to communicate these issues with our constituents and to be active as a team to make sure that we soften the effects of that supply and demand issue, and that we have reliable sources into the future that result in additional gas to the meters of our constituents. So that's our goal as a team. We'll be working with other policymakers, legislators, and the governor, as well as the industry, to make sure that we have the right pieces in place to be prepared for the short term, to avoid those high increases in energy costs, and to make sure that we have reliable source of natural gas and other energies into the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to call on several of the mayors to make comments. It'll be in this order. Mayor Glenda Ledford now, and then Brian Gabriel, Mayor of Kenai, and then Mayor from Houston, Carter Cole, and then we will pivot to online to Mayor Edna DeVries from the Matsu Borough. So,
As mayor of the fastest growing city in the state, it's my responsibility to help bring a solution to this. So, working with all of the mayors and everybody that's concerned with this to bring a positive solution, not only for Wasilla, but for the rest of the state.
Thank you, Brian Gabriel, Mayor of the City of Kenai. Thank you, Mayor Bronson, for hosting this. And as I like to point out, I don't think anybody can disagree, is that reliable energy, is most important to all of our communities for our prosperity, our safety, our growth moving forward. And every group should start out with a mission statement. You heard that from Mayor Ledford. And I just want to point out is that when you look at that mission statement, that my takeaway, and hopefully yours, is that we're being proactive instead of reactive to these dynamics that are happening and could be happening in the future. So thank you.
I'd like to thank Mayor Bronson also. This is very important that we solve these things now to allow the growth to continue in our areas. And I think this is the right time and the right place to start this and make this happen so that the people don't get into a jam. That's it.
and let's go to, Steve, sorry.
Steve Carrington, City of Palmer Mayor. While I'm not the mayor of the fastest growing city, but I'm mayor of a city that really likes stability and having things work in a well-mannered fashion. And so this is very important. And I think the issues that we can do is bring communication and sharing that with our citizens and the governor and the legislature and anyone else that needs to be involved.
And with that, let's go to Edna online. Edna, you can hear us, right?
Yes, I can. And Yes, I'm Edna DeVries, Mayor of the Matsu Borough, and I just echo what everybody else is saying there. I'm very glad that Mayor Bronson took the bull by the horns and said, okay, we need to deal with this, and we're going to find some solutions, as Mayor Machicki said, long-term type solutions, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do for all of our constituents. Between all of us, we represent about 75% of Alaska, but yet our communities touch every area in Alaska, and so I really appreciate this, and I echo what all of the mayors have said regarding caring for our consumers. Thank you.
Thank you, Edna. And with that, we'll take some questions. And Luke will be running this for us. Go ahead.
What are some potential incentives that might be offered, or other solutions? Maybe heat reduction, voluntary heat reduction. What are some ideas that might happen, and when does the work start? Also,
Well, again, this is the first meeting of this group. We don't have a stated objective or solution. We wouldn't presume to have that at this stage. However, the governor, we believe, has a package. The governor here several weeks ago had a proposed piece of legislation that I believe will incentivize production in Cook Inlet, new production in Cook Inlet, and I believe it has, or it does have something to do with royalties. So beyond that, I'm not going to comment on incentives, or certainly where we are on the actual development of the resource.
Over here. Nat Hers with Northern Journal. So the governor already has his energy security task force group. The legislature just had a meeting about this last week. They've been traveling all over the place, getting up to speed on this issue. It seems like everyone is aware of this problem and is kind of separately working toward their own solutions. So, like, what is the specific interest and perspective that you guys will bring this issue that isn't already represented in the policy discussion around Cook Inlet, South Central Energy?
Well, Nat, certainly people are informed because you're writing over the last year or two on this, and we read what you do, and we appreciate that. The other thing is that we have a unique perspective as mayors of South Central, of Cook Inlet, essentially. We are, again, as Edna said, we're 75% roughly of the state of Alaska. So we have, I think, a unique perspective, and Anchorage is the single largest, geographically, the single largest user of Cook Inlet natural gas. Let's keep that in mind. So our jobs is to make sure our constituents are well represented by their executive elected leaders, which are mayors. So we're gonna add our voice, but your notion that we're all working towards separate solution, I think I'll question that assumption there. We don't know enough to say that we're all working on separate solutions. I would like to think going forward we will all be working on the same solution, but that's going to take some time. And
are you a little worried that if the problem doesn't get solved and South Central gets hit with 50% or 100% increase in gas prices, that you guys are the ones that get blamed for that?
well, this is, as we said in my comments and what Peter said, Mayor Machicki said, this is complex, and the notion that that we mayors would be blamed for a natural gas shortage. We want to be one of the several voices collectively with this coalition that gets us to the right solution and gets us to greater production, greater electrical and electrical production security going forward. I don't think this is a time to be placing blame. This is a time to come together for solutions for the state.
Wesley Early with Alaska Public Media. I know that a lot of utilities are looking at the potential of outsourcing natural gas. As discussions occur about, what the royalty should be on actual production, how open are you to, exporting or importing natural gas from elsewhere?
I think I'm going to call on Mayor Machicki to ask that because of his experience in the legislature and in the industry itself. I think he's a little more qualified to delve into that.
So great questions. And Nat, we're used to being blamed for everything. So that's just what we do for a living, right? Bottom line is we need to look at a short-term, mid-term, and a long-term solution. And if mid-term or short-term needs to involve the importation of natural gas, we have that capacity. I know that politically people say, how could Alaska possibly even consider importing natural gas with what we have available? Well, market forces and the impacts we've seen of the supply of PAC-Rim LNG moving toward Western Europe have been advantageous for the long term. And I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. The AK LNG project is more attractive now than ever. So in the long term, I don't think the importation of natural gas is a viable option, but we certainly can't write it off today as a short or midterm option if that's what we need to meet our demands.
Do you think the LNG project is still as viable as it was a few years ago? I know it's been, since at least the Walker administration, it's been a plan, but it doesn't seem to have gained a lot of traction.
So I've been involved with meeting with investors that have a very different outlook that they had a very short time ago. Our traditional trade partners in the PAC Rim that have been buyers of LNG for the last 50 years are more interested than they've ever been, again, because of the shift to those BTUs from their traditional suppliers to Western Europe. That's a good thing for us. I think it looks more attractive now than it has economically. When you look at the price of LNG and the potential future price of LNG, it will probably remain attractive. At some point, Alaskans have to pull the trigger on a long-term solution. And when we've pulled the trigger in the past, the result of TAPS, which was a very risky venture, ended up putting $75 billion into state savings, and it's funded most of what this state has done for the last 60 years. I mean, the bottom line is we need to have a formulated plan and execute that plan if we want long-term energy security. Right now, we don't have that. And that's what happens when you wait. You're going to have dips. You're going to have times that you'll worry. We talked about rolling brownouts in the past, and we solved that problem. Some of those solutions will remain as a part of this short-term solution. We have storage now that we didn't used to have. There are other options that we can employ into this long-term solution. But at some point, we're going to have to be bold. If we want long-term energy security, and Alaska's key is cheap energy, not affordable energy. Long-term cheap energy is important. We have so many other things that are more expensive up here. If we're going to compete, we need to take advantage of cheap energy supplies and make that available. So long way to go on the long-term solution. I think there are options that for the shorter term that we should never talk about taking off the table, even if it sounds politically difficult. A short-term, mid-term, and a long-term supply is key to our constituents.
Steve? Yeah, so I'm just curious if you guys could go look into a little bit more of how the coalition's going to work. Are you guys going to have like monthly meetings, and how are you going to go about, informing the public of like solutions or incentives or things that you're discussing, looking at? How's that going to work?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. As Glenda read in our mission statement, our job is to represent and come to the facts, gather the facts, the data, make recommendations. But the second part of that was to communicate to our constituents. We don't want the public afraid of huge spikes in natural gas costs, the cost of heating, the cost of electricity. We want them to know that at the executive political level, the mayor's level, we are working together, and this coalition is the best tool for us to execute on that. We formed this group just recently, but we will be having meetings, and I think we all know that on the 8th we'll be waiting for the governor's legislative proposal. We'll take a look at that, and then we'll move forward as that works through the legislative process and during session.
Okay, and I know you kind of said you didn't want to speak about incentives, but and I know you guys said you didn't want to speak about incentives, but for you yourself as mayor of Anchorage, have you and the assembly, are you discussed about maybe starting discussions about things that maybe you guys can do at the local level anything like that?
I've not begun those conversations with the assembly. We will begin with my assembly, and I can't speak for the other mayors, but I can't see why anyone would not. This is all hands on deck. I said that in my statement. We've got to come together on this. There's no politics in BTUs. We've got to keep the price low, cheap. Natural gas is what we and therefore cheap electricity is what will make us prosper going forward, and that's what we're working toward, and we will be communicating with the public on that.
If I may, have any of the other mayors, have you guys had discussions at the local level what you guys can do? If anyone has.
We have not, but like Mayor Bronson, we definitely will have.
We're actually trying to get gas into our area because it is the cheapest, cleanest energy. So it's very important to all of us.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Well, I find myself fighting over the mic with our former Senate president. As I would say, as I pointed out, this is such an important topic for each of our communities that we need to just be in front of it and understand that this is something. I think there was even a mention of alternative energy. I know King is gas and cooking it, so that's our focus. It's our most cheapest, reliable form of energy right now. So that's going to be probably in place. But that's not to say that there's things that couldn't be moving forward with this coalition moving forward. So.
Yeah, it's a good question. I have within Kenai Peninsula Borough is where I believe all of the production takes place. It was the site of the discovery of Swanson River in '57. It's where the lion's share of local production occurs in Cook Inlet and across the inlet and onshore. And so there are a couple of producers that came on board during the Cook Inlet Recovery Act that are kind of on a margin. We're looking at ways that we can help them secure some funding for additional production. And all additional production pushes the date out when it becomes a critical issue. We've been dealing with the state a little bit on tax issues. We are certainly willing to negotiate on property tax things that would soften the impacts of getting these companies going, at least delaying their property tax burden or offsetting their property tax burden until they can get into production. I mean, that's kind of how it works in this business. And until you're producing, things are exorbitantly expensive. Once you're producing, you can often catch up on some of those bills that were offset during your production or your exploration early days. So we're going to continue having those conversations. We're certainly willing to talk to producers and utilities on what a full package looks like. The key here, and this is why I think to answer your question, is our constituents really don't have a direct voice. I mean, they don't call producers. They hear from the utilities, but often they hear from utilities when utilities are raising their prices. But we're responsible to communicating with them on a regular basis. And I don't want them to panic. We will find solutions as we have in the past to get to that point. But I think we're the right group on who communicates with the small business owner that is on a margin already because things have been tough and they hear that their energy prices might double in the near future. I think we're the right people to talk to. We fund the schools. Energy bills in the schools are going to increase somewhat dramatically if this comes to fruition and we don't find a solution. So I think it's the right group for not only keeping people calm, but supporting those 75% of the state's population with the other working bodies as well, such as the legislature and the utility. So that's what we're doing right now. As we look at what comes from legislation, if it's the right incentives to incentivize additional production that we can support, then we can lend our support with stodgy legislators that might be hesitant on another plan. And for some of us, that's kind of our specialty. So I think by banding together, hopefully we can get a better result.
More questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, now.
Yeah, I'm curious how much you guys see whether there are potential policies you guys could adopt on a municipal basis. Maybe it's a taxation question as well to expedite the development of renewable power projects and how much that could help address this situation, not by replacing gas with gas, but by replacing gas with other forms of power.
Well, I think at this stage, and by the way, I want to add that Mayor Ken Kastner joined online. He had some work this morning, so he got in a little bit late. So, Mayor Kastner, welcome here to that. But Nat, your question is right now, that's not the purpose of this commission, or this coalition. Our job is to come together and analyze and then communicate to the public. As individual mayors, we certainly have the right to work with our assemblies to go forward and work on policies that would reduce electrical usage or bring on other sources. But that's not a discussion for this commission or this coalition at this time.
Could that be part of the mix for legislative proposals then?
Well, a legislature is made up of a bunch of people, and what they want to propose is their business. That's not our business for this purpose. Our purpose is to get Cook Inlet natural gas as plentiful and therefore as cheap as possible for our constituents. That's what we're going to focus on here going forward.
When can we expect the report with recommendations?
Oh, that will be sometime out. We probably won't have our first formal meeting until certainly after the governor's package comes out, his legislative package. So I would imagine the third week of third week of January, we will give us a couple weeks to analyze his proposal and then move forward from there. And then we got to get a feel where the legislature is on that. So,
Thank you, everybody.
all right. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.